Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the late start of this important session, as we are talking to important people, farmers, all of which are important for the livelihoods of many people across the entire globe. Welcome to this Farmers Forum, an important part of the AGRF. I shall not waste time to go into the theme of the AGRF as we have all the paperwork. We've lost a bit of time trying to sort out the technology. And I can see familiar faces here, distinguished people, and I shall not introduce them as I come on. I'll just say their names, maybe a few words here and there. But this session is fundamentally important in many respects, not least because we are responsible for feeding the entire globe, and that we are responsible for the livelihoods of so many people in the entire planet. And also we're responsible for the custodianship of the natural resources and the ecosystem through which we work. And also we're responsible for the entire community, economies, as most of the agriculture is linked into virtually all sectors of the economy. Today we have a very impressive lineup, starting with Dr. Kalibata, who needs no introduction. I'll start by myself first, without forgetting myself. My name is Ishmael Sunga. I work for the Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Unions, which is a regional farmers organizations operating from Pretoria, South Africa, and covering the rest of Southern Africa, where a structure for all national farmers unions in this part of the region. I have the distinct honor and pleasure to invite Dr. Kalibata to give us the keynote address, opening remarks. And it's really a privilege to me to invite her to speak from many angles, but one of which, as you know, that she is not only the president of AGRA, but she is also the UN Envoy for the Food System Summit, which is for next year. And I'm honored and privileged to be serving under one of the structures that are supporting her in this role. Dr. Kalibata, please come and address us. Thank you.
So this way. I look like this. Ismail, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead, doctor.
Can you see me?
I can see you from a distance, but I suppose the technical people can sort that one out.
So they can
Oh, there we are.
Huh?
Now we can see you.
Very good, very good. Yeah. So thank you, Ismail, for those introductory remarks. For me, if you talk about the 4 days or 5 days that we are going to have here today, if I do like this, can you see my face, Ismail? So I don't have to turn.
Yes,
very good.
I can see your face, but yeah.
Yeah, very good. So it's one of the most important days of the week because we are talking to the farming community. And the farming community is where the rubber meets the road. It's where everything happens. So I'm really excited, both from my work as the president of AGRA, but also from my work as a special envoy. And let me start just briefly from a president of AGRA perspective. Whether people like it or not, AGRA, the institution, exists to ensure that we as Africans can have access to technologies the rest of the world has. So we work very hard to ensure that businesses, especially SMEs, can produce seed so that farmers can have access to good seed, that small businesses, agro-dealerships, can exist in the environment where farmers live so that farmers can have good services. We exist so that farmers can access inputs, but also we exist to support governments and our governments to ensure that we have the right policies so that farmers can have the things they need. So it really gives me pleasure to be talking to farmers on the continent because every day when I think about what we are doing as an institution, what gives me hope is that we can actually help these farmers have better livelihoods, produce more, and have better livelihoods because they have access to technologies other people in the world have access to, because they can change their lives too. Now, I want to talk to you about something else as well. As Ismail has said, I'm also the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for the Food Systems Summit. What that means is the UN Secretary General is saddened by the fact that we are not coming through on our development goals. We have set out SDGs. We have talked about how we can deliver on a number of SDGs, and we are not doing so, you know. We are not doing so. We are behind on hunger. We have 690 million people that are hungry. 251 million live on this continent. 1 in every 3 people are obese. Here on this continent, 40% of our children are malnourished. And we are actually also adding a problem to the climate change that is impacting us now. How do we add a problem as Africans? Part of it is just land degradation. Whether we cut trees and forests, whether we dig soils and then they get eroded because we've done that, all these things contribute to climate change. So what we need to do, and why the summit was launched, is we start thinking about our contribution to the degradation of our environment. As you would know, all of you farmers know, our environment is our most important asset as farmers. We need it to produce, but we also need it to leave it to our children so that they can produce, so that they can leave it to their children. Right now, we are sitting at a place where it's not even enough for us, leave alone our children. So the Food Systems Summit hopes that we can have a conversation around how we can fix these problems. And my job is to make sure that these conversations happen with farmers, not just with presidents, not just with scientists, not just with businesses, with farmers and farmers' communities. As you would know, kandi mwebwe abanyarwanda hano murabizi muri hano. Nanje ababyeyi banje n'abahinzi nkamwe. I'm a daughter of a farmer too. So I understand what is at stake here. I would not have been able to go to school if a farmer who is my parent hadn't farmed. So I know what is at stake here. And what is at stake here is that we are losing that capability to produce. So I want to cut my whole long story short. I want to make sure that today I use the opportunity to hear you. I'm the Secretary General's Special Envoy. I listen and I take back messages. But I also listen and I work with the rest of the world, and I will work with you to see the best way we can fix these problems. So I want to know how you see us help contribute to fixing this problem. Here in Africa, we are most impacted by climate change. Many of you farmers don't even understand what climate change is. But what you know is that your rains don't come on time. What you know is that you get floods that you have never seen in your lives. This needs to stop if you're going to be able to produce and produce sustainably. If you're going to produce and leave this to your children, this land to your children. So I really want to hear your ideas on how we, as farmers, we, the people that help you and work with you, can help fix this. How can we reduce the number of people that are hungry? How can we reduce the number of our children that are still malnourished? And how can we reduce this whole thing of climate change that is coming from how we use the environment? Those are the things I want to discuss with you. Those are the things I want to hear from you. I want to hear your views. I want to hear your thoughts. And for the next 1 year, I'm going to make sure that we hear your views and hear your thoughts. Here, I'm joined by Rwandans in this room. And I would be amiss if I didn't help these people, these farmers in this room, understand what we are talking about. Nagira ngo mbabwire icyaduhuje hangaha n'impamvu twabatumiye. Twabatumiye kugira ngo tubaganirize ku kibazo kijyanye n'ihinduka ry'ibihe rituruka ku buhinzi n'ukuntu dukora ubuhinzi. Murabyumva? So twebwe nk'abahinzi dukoresha ubutaka, ndabizi abenshi mu bukoresha neza, ariko muzi n'isuri mu Rwanda icyo bisobanuye. Muzi ubutaka bwacu akenshi ukuntu butwarwa n'isuri. Muzi ikibazo cyo iyo umuntu atemye ishyamba uko bigenda, isuri nanone riraza. Rero isi yose tumaze kubona ko icyo kibazo ari ikibazo kinini cyane. Isi yose tumaze kubona yuko ibiza bigenda bitwugariza cyane kubera ukuntu dukoresha ibidukikije. Rero impamvu nagira ngo uyu munsi icyo nashaka ko uyu munsi tuganiraho no kugira ngo twungurane ibitekerezo. Twakora iki mbega nk'abanyarwanda? Twakora iki nk'abahinzi? Twebwe uruhare rwacu ni uruhe kugira ngo ibintu bihinduke? Isi yacu tuyisubiranye yongere imere neza, duhinge neza. Ubutaka muzasugira abana banyu buzari ubutaka bufite agaciro. nicyo twahuriye aha kugira ngo tuganire uyu munsi. Ndagira ngo numve ibitekerezo byanyu, ndagira ngo numve ibyifuzo byanyu, ariko hanze hariya nk'uko mubona uriya mugabo hari abandi bantu benshi bifuza ko tuganira kuri iki kibazo. Nicyo nagira ngo rero tuganire. Thank you again, Ismail. I'm going to be sitting here listening to you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And I think the message is very loud and clear from here that farmers, through their structures and individually, need to raise their voices to articulate what is it that they need within the context of the Food System Summit that is that will be held next year. And this is an opportunity for us really to bring our voices together and begin to champion our cause and champion our aspirations and articulate our needs in the run-up to the Food System Summit. Without much ado, let me invite, and really it's a pleasure for me to invite my dear friend, a colleague. I also call him a partner in crime. We have done so many things together. We have been in the trenches of farmers' organizations together. Dr. Fadel Ndiame, the Vice President of AGRA. My pleasure once more to invite you to address the meeting. Over to you.
Thank you, Ishmael. It gives me pleasure after my
boss,
Dr. Agnes Kalibata, to address this important forum in my capacity as Deputy President of AGRA, but as Ishmael said, as a long-time friend of the farmer movement and farmer organization. And as Dr. Kalibata said, I'm just thrilled by the opportunities provided both by the AGRF of this year and by the perspective of the upcoming Food Summit. As we all know, we rallied here in Kigali to deal with the challenges of feeding cities and growing the continent. And I think as farmers, this is probably one of the best news that could happen to us. The second opportunity is what Dr. Kalibata said. I mean, the world is rethinking its food system, realizing that we need to do better, produce more food, quality food, do it in a sustainable way that provides opportunities to all. I think that's a reset that provides a huge opportunity for farm organization. The nature of the task is such that as a collective, as members of the AGRF partners and others, we need to rethink how best to listen to all the constituency in this collective challenge. And farmers probably, to the point that both Ishmael and Dr. Kalibata mentioned, are probably one of the first constituency. Partly because you grow the food that we eat, but you will be our pioneer in leading us in growing quality food sustainably in a way that also preserves our environment. So it's totally proper, and I want to thank Dr. Kalibata for creating the space for listening to your voice. Now, I realize that farm organizations and farmers are very diverse. Therefore, it's important to hear all the voices and to see how you're thinking about a transformed food system, what role you're willing to play in it, and what support is required for this to happen. Because we are dealing with a very diverse group, we don't expect to have a blueprint. Each farmer, each farm organization in their own context will make the choices of the tools, technologies, and resources that are required. As partners, at AGRF partners, our role is to listen and provide support. I think the first area of support is listening to your voices. As we do that, we should also listen to how best to support you create more value for yourself and your farm in a more viable way. So I think this is the great opportunity that we look forward to participating. With this few words, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndiame. Very important words indeed. What I captured from his very few words was this phrasing of that the world is rethinking about the way that food is being produced, food is being distributed, food is being processed, food is being consumed, and the world is, and we are part of the world. What we really need to focus as part of this meeting is whether, as being part of the world, we should also be rethinking and influencing the thinking of how the world is thinking. Let's not have the world think for us. We need to think for ourselves and assert ourselves in those processes and fora that are shaping the way agriculture is going to look like in the future. Let's not be followers. Let's be leaders also in that respect. And this is the space, part of the space that we have to capitalize on that, and for AGRA and others to listen and be able to carry those messages to the powers that be. Like it or not, one might say that what happens around the world has a bearing on what also our progress in our farming can achieve. So we need to intervene at different levels, at the farmer level, at the regional level, at the country level, and indeed at the world level, in which a lot of the thinking is now taking place. And farmers' organizations obviously play an important role in that. Without wasting much time, let me call upon, in rapid succession, no more than 5 minutes for each of the presenters to give us, in their own words, what is it that they want to see, what is in the food system that they want in the future. I know they've been spoken to about it, and they know exactly the messages they want to carry. I'll start with Joe Mzinga. Need no introduction, is from ISAF. Joe, please address the meeting. Thank you. Joe, you are muted.
Sorry, thank you.
There we are.
Thank you very much, Comrade. I have 5 minutes. Let me try if I can make. I'm working with ISAF, in Southern Africa Small Scale Farmers Forum. We are in 16 countries in Eastern Southern Africa. So we are linking both the Eastern but also the SADC with SACAU. So as Dr. Kalibata said that, so there is an echo, 90% of the world hungry are food. This is Asia and also in Africa. But what is shocking is that the projection in the coming 10 years, about 2030, so Africa would become increasingly more people who are hungry, almost like 430 million are nourished, but also malnutrition, as Doctor said. And ironically, we are 4 years away to reach the Malabo by 2025, but also the SDG 1 and 2 specifically. And if we look at the Southern Africa, I think Comrade Shunga could clearly say almost 45 million people are food insecure. And what is shocking is that in the last 3 years, the increase was about 67%. So this is really shocking, and we have to do something. But what's more shocking that in the region, East Southern Africa, is only Rwanda that is on track to achieve Malabo. In Africa, we have only 3 countries, 4 countries in general. So this is shocking that we need to do something, and we need to do something very, very quickly. So what are the greatest opportunity for improvement of food system? Single one. I can say we need to scale up agroecological practices because this we have particularly poor farmers, millions of poor farmers cope with climate change, but also avoid risk and debt trap looking forward. But also to ensure that farmers, they have ownership of land, but also caring for the earth and not using inputs or chemicals that are going to harm or to destroy the soil, also water. And agriculture that will ensure health and food and nutritious food for people, also for animals. So what are the actions? Number one is putting farmers at the heart of the public policy and the budgeting processes, particularly women, youth, and poor men. We think that if we put smallholder producers at the heart in terms of policy planning and budgeting processes, even these policies that we are talking about, the SDGs, the global framework, the CADIP, and the Malabo 7 goals, but also the regional investment plans, but also the national investment plan over to the grassroots investment plan will be implemented swiftly. So number one action is we need farmers' participation, farmers or smallholder producers generally to be at the heart of the policy processes, but also in terms of the budget. Number two, which is very, very critical, it was there during the 70s and 80s, we need to revisit and re-energize rural and peri-urban development as of sustainable production and processing. You know, if we look at the pyramid as far as food system is concerned, at the top we see consumers, millions of consumers. At the middle we see facilitators, and on the bottom we see producers, particularly majority women and youth. We would like to see them also being facilitated as far as the processing. So we want to see the rural and peri-urban areas as centers of sustainable development. One, to support the producers' cooperatives. That's number one. Number two, to support in terms of cheap energy and sustainable energy. In Africa, we have abundant sun, but solar is very, very expensive, so to speak, which majority cannot afford. So remove VAT, remove everything as far as solar is concerned, but also ensure that infrastructure, rural infrastructures like roads, irrigation, health system, storage, markets, ICT are also part and parcel of the rural and peri-urban development. Number three, and last one in terms of action, is in terms of improving service. And this should focus to support agroecological agriculture, which is mainly using internal resources, but also support biodiversity and also local seed bank. We see increasingly OPV seed are disappearing because they are not really suitable in terms of bringing money. So, but we would like to see public institutions also focusing on OPV or local seeds, diversity of them. And bad enough, we are focusing very much on rice and maize. And that's why maybe we have a lot of malnutrition in our region. Lastly, the call for action, three things from smallholder farmers. Number one, we need to see quantum change on the agriculture system and support toward agroecological agriculture. Number two, realization and funding of levels of the main policy frameworks from SDG, as Dr. said, at the global level, also continental, going to the region and going to the nation through the CADIP, which is interpreted as the regional investment plan at the regional level, but also which are interpreted as the national agriculture investment plan at the national level. And lastly, a call for action is to ensure we have seriously looking at the rural development and extension services. I thank you for those few words, Mr. Moderator. Over to you, Mr. Shum.
Thank you very much, Joe. We'll come back to some of your comments. Very, very, very informative and very practical. May I call upon the next speaker, who is Ms. Onywale Patience Koku, the CEO of Replenish Farms. Please address us, Ms.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Patience Koku. I'm a farmer in Nigeria. I'm a first-generation commercial farmer. I transited from fashion to farming. And I basically didn't have any experience. No family who had farmed, father, grandfather, none were farmers. And I always say farming has been the most difficult thing I've done in my life. Having said that, in order to have efficient food systems in Africa, we need a lot of support for farmers. Going into farming, I was basically in a sea swimming all by myself without sufficient assistance to guide farmers. In order to have resilient food systems in Africa, Africa needs to be able to grow enough food to feed herself. And that means that everything has to be, productivity has to be efficient. We have to have sustainable ways of growing food. Currently, I live in the most populous country in Africa, where we currently have farming yields that are way below 1 ton per hectare. It is important to have every tool in the box accessible to farmers. So I'm very big on access, and I'd like to see a food system in the future where we have access. Farmers have access to the best technology, to science, suitable to African farmers. I say this because the world, where the world is today, if we say the future of farming systems in Africa, which is where Africa wants to be in the near future, it is where a lot of people are now. So the future really is now for some people. And so Africa is also in a very strategic position where we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so there's a lot of technology, a lot of science, a lot of tools that are available that many countries have used to produce food efficiently and have been able to have a surplus, which is what Africa imports. And so if we're able to take those technologies and adapt them, and I say that for Africa, technology needs to be scaled down. And so we bring it down to the level where the smallest smallholder farmer can benefit from access to mechanization or, or simple technologies that are available for spraying or whatever that improves productivity. In order to feed ourselves and feed possibly the world, we have to produce more. So producing more food means working to improve our yields. And this is what access for African farmers to technology, to mechanization, to good inputs, seeds, and so on, working holistically in a coordinated value chain can give us. Also, I'd like to see a future food system in Africa where we have projects that are targeted at achieving realistic goals. So improved optimum productivity is very key. There's a lot of research that is sitting on the shelves all over the world that if we could adapt in Africa, and I would like to see a food system in Africa where we do not exclude anything. Every safe tool should be accessible to African farmers to use. The world is using all kinds of technologies, all kinds of science, all kinds of research. And in the words of Norman Borlaug, I would say take it to the farmer. In terms of mechanization for Africa, for instance, we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel, we would simply be scaling down existing technologies to help us as farmers in Africa be more efficient. And I'm also hopeful to see a future food system in Africa where we have a lot of transfer of technology. One of the things that I have been able to get as a member of the Global Farmer Network is I was able to, through farming partners in Argentina and through AgriSeed, I was able to begin to try out no-till farming.
If you could start, Patience, if you could start winding up, please.
Yes. So I was able to transfer simple technologies like no-till to Nigeria, where I've been able to adapt it. And this is something that will help us with climate change. The call to action for me would be to see all the partners, government, NGOs, everybody involved, AGRA, all the people working together to achieve specific goals and working with real farmers to be able to achieve our goals of providing enough food and having sustainable food systems in Africa, where Africa no longer has to be dependent on others to be able to feed herself.
Okay, thank you very much, Patience. Can I call upon, is it Dr. Dick Kamuganga to address us, please? Dick, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Ismail. All protocol observed. My name is Dr. Dick Kamuganga. I'm the president of Uganda National Farmers Federation. Uganda National Farmers Federation is the largest farmers organization here in Uganda. It's an umbrella organization with 120 members and is the farmers organization by the farmers and for the farmers. I myself, I'm a smallholder dairy farmer from the southwestern Uganda. I keep dairy animals for milking, for milking. And in the spirit of the current summit, first let me take this opportunity to thank the president of AGRA and the deputy president and you yourself, and also meeting here with my president, Theo, of the World Farmers Organization, and all the farmers across the globe who are listening in. The topic of the matter here, I would like to pick one word from the Vice President, who said, rethinking the food systems on the African continent. First, it's a shame that we are importing up to the tune of $40 billion food when we host more than 65% of our arable land, which is suitable for agriculture. So the challenge, Madam President, and your Vice President and the entire team, is how do we reverse in this rethinking? How do we reverse the importation bill of $40 billion, which would be going to other things apart from importing food, like building human capital in the farming sector. And I have analyzed this based on key risks that the smallholder farmers face. The first risk is the organizational capacity risk. As smallholder farmers, we are many, and our continent is the largest inhabitant of smallholder farmers. The average acreage below 5 acres, scattered in different enterprises, which are not economically feasible. So in rethinking, what opportunities do we have? I do think that we have an opportunity to adapt the revolutionary digital tools that have come along. How can digital tools help farmers' organizations like ours? I see the president, the different members of the regional organizations, including AGRA. The digital tools have demonstrated that they can help us do our mandates properly. Which are our mandates? Mandate number one is to mobilize smallholder farmers. Mandate number two is to organize these smallholder farmers into feasible entities. Mandate number three is to empower these smallholder farmers by giving them technical know-how on how to efficiently produce, on how to efficiently market, on how to efficiently acquire the inputs. Madam President, if we do adapt these digital tools, which have shown a potential to reduce transaction costs to put together these smallholder farmers across the globe, across our continent, we will be able to answer the question which you mentioned, lagging behind on achieving the sustainable development goals. I can cite the 337 pillars in this case. The pillar number one, or objective number one, would be to make sure every household in Africa has sufficient food and sufficient nutrition, what you would call food and nutrition security. The pillar number two, would every household to have sufficient income? Can these digital tools help us to have sufficient food and nutrition, sufficient income? Pillar number three would be having sufficient good, decent household jobs, that is along the farming value chains. Can we use the digital tools and increase the power of the farmer to earn income from their activities? Pillar number four would be sustainable development. Do these digital tools that we have seen mushrooming, the revolutionaries, can they help us use our resources properly? Can they help us sustain our soil properly, and therefore enable sustainable use of our ecosystems? Pillar number five is inclusive growth. Are these digital tools going to help us mobilize the youth and women? In Africa, most of the food is produced by women and youth. can they help us to include the women, women earning income, and have higher standards of living? Pillar number 6 is export expansion. Most of our countries are donor dependent, but we have the resources in terms of arable land. We have the resources in terms of human beings. We are going to hit 1.2 billion, or a quarter of the human population by 2050. How can we turn these people into income generating for the nations and their household? We need to expand the exports. Pillar number 7 is integration of smallholder farmers in the national, regional, and international agricultural value chains. Can we use these digital tools? We have heard of experts. I am a farmer, I don't know this, but we have heard of experts saying traceability, premium markets, all these things with the digital tools that are available. Can we help our farmers integrate in the global agricultural value chain? Pillar number 8 is the idea of inclusive business models. It should be a challenge for Madam President, Vice President, and my colleagues here. How do we ensure that now is a new era for the smallholder farmer? Is not left behind once again. And once he's not left behind, it means the continent is not going to be left behind. So how do we use the new technology to lift everybody on the shore and bring them on the shore? And
Dick, can I interrupt a little bit? If you can give us your call to actions, then we can wind up.
My call to action, Madam, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moderator, and also Madam President and your deputy, my core action is deep partnerships on adoption of these digital technologies to move farm productivity to the next level, to reverse the importation bill, and to increase the standards of living, to remove hunger on African continent. My second call for action, Madam President, and the team, the rest of the team, and heads of governments who are listening in, is a coordination of these digital tools. In Uganda, we have so many companies working on different aspects in a segmented way. And the end result is segmented results. So how do we harmonize and generate a coordination approach? And then core number, lastly, the call for action is research on these digital tools, which are more efficient, effective, that are going to effectively bring the desirable change in the long run. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dick. Very loaded messages, including the area of digital technology to solve a multitude of problems. Maybe let me go back to Mr. Musi. If you are ready now, please, Mr. Musi, you can take the stage.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Hello, my name is Mutlati Musi. I'm a farmer from South Africa. I've been farming. There's an echo there. I've been farming almost all my life because I started as an underage commercial farm laborer. And thank you all for the support you gave during our dark days of apartheid. You stood up, criticized the bad South African regime. Now, because of your criticism, I'm a proud owner of 21 hectares of land. Give yourself a big applause. In this new South Africa, we are using modern technologies. Every technology that comes from cell phone to biotechnology in agriculture, we're having it. I often wonder why the rest of my continent is not. I've hosted so many MPs, media, farmers from the SADC who were on my farm on a fact-finding mission, GMO fact-finding mission. But to date, it is still a debate in those countries where for more than 10 years, people came on a fact-finding mission. Why don't they find facts? What are they doing now 10 years later? Do they tell their farmers about the success that we in South Africa are having using biotechnology in agriculture? I managed to send my children to school using these technologies. My son is now a scientist, and the money for his school fees is from agriculture. The house I'm sitting in now was given a facelift last year. Some of the money is from those profits. Now, can Africa also not be left behind and adapt to modern technologies that will help us to adapt to the changed environment that we are facing? I am a farmer. I don't speak much. We work a lot. I think I'm not going to say more, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musi, for those words. I move on to the next speaker, who is Helen Akinyo Onyango. Helen, please take the floor.
Thank you, Ismail. Okay, my name is Helen Akinyo Onyango. I'm a crop aggregator working with Farm to Market Alliance, and I'm also the director of Helena AgSpace. So, what is my vision for the food systems in Africa? One, where the cost of production is reasonable, so farmers can easily access inputs and resources readily, which means that they will produce more better quality foods and which are more nutritious. Two, a ready market where producers can access all those markets with ease and without facing so many obstacles. Three, where women SMEs are supported in terms of being given credit facilities easily. We find that women make up for 50% of the workforce in agriculture. Yet when you look at areas like in Kenya, only a fifth of them can access credit facilities. So we need to fill this gap so women can actually have a say in the whole process. Three, where people consume locally produced foods than foods that come from outside. When you consume locally produced foods, means that we'll get them when they're still fresh. So there's nothing lost in between. You don't have to keep them for longer or try to process them more in order for people to access them later. And when we're still feeding on locally produced foods, we are trying to reduce the carbon footprint because we do not need to move the food distances in order to reach other people. Four, where wastages are minimized. You see, like in countries, like in continents like Africa, we are producing so much food, but in the same time, we are losing so much due to wastages in between, like storage. We do not have proper storages. So we end up losing so much instead of using the same foods that we are losing to feed the poor. On my second issue on the greatest opportunity I see in food systems, I want to go back to what Madam President has said, Dr. Kalibata, about malnutrition. So here I see an opportunity where Africa can have a chance to produce wholesome food with wholesome nutrition. We all know that right about now we are facing this pandemic, and the key thing that we've always been told over and over is to stay healthy. How do we stay healthy? So if we can produce better quality foods and people can access the better quality foods, I think it will be one way of staying healthy. Another thing will be on food safety. How safe is the food we're eating? So if the foods on our supermarkets is safe, means that we'll be eating more nutritious food. Another thing will be that consumers should also be vigilant. They should be aware on the type of foods and what the process has taken the food that is in their shelves to get to where it is. So they need to be aware on the food safety. On the other question on actions to achieve those better systems, one, inclusivity, where this one I'm talking about the young people. We all know that agriculture has been left most of the time in Africa to the old generation. So this means that there's no a pipeline for new innovations and ideas by the young people. Like in Africa, only 2% of African students are involved in agriculture. And yet at the same time, 32% of the African GDP comes from agriculture. So why can't we make agriculture more appealing and profitable to the young people so that we could address the issue of food security? 2, support SMEs. Most of these SMEs are run in agriculture are run by women. So if these women can access the credit facilities, and also during such times like in COVID times, people in SMEs, in agricultural SMEs, don't have a financial fallback plan. We all see that other areas are being boosted, but no one is thinking about the smallholder farmer. No one is saying that maybe the smallholder farmer went through some losses here and there. We need to compensate this farmer for that. So there should be room for that during such times. 3, training and skill transfer, where people are trained and skills are transferred, especially on climate smart agriculture. Another issue is to promote a self-sustaining ecosystem where the producer is producing knowing very much comfortable that there's a consumer. So there's no gap in between where I have produced and I do not have someone to buy my product on the other side. And the other thing is partnerships. We need to promote partnerships between private organizations and government institutions where they come together for the mutual benefit of the smallholder farmer. On another thing, a call to action. Maybe my call to action will come from, we need more support for women and youth in agriculture. As I had already said that women account for 50% of this workforce, yet only a fifth of that can access credit facilities. So if people can come up, interested parties can come up and support these more women, I think that there will be more production and we will be in a better position in terms of food. 2 is to train these people on climate smart agriculture. 3, include these women and young people in decision making on matters related to agriculture. And on matters of nutrition, if we are to involve more women in agriculture and attract them, we all know that the chances are very high for a woman who's empowered to take her money and buy food to feed her family. So that means that the issue of nutrition is going to be tackled very much at the house level rather than on the other. So women need to be empowered on that. And
if you could prepare to wind up, please.
Thank you. And
are you done? Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Youth should also be taken into consideration since they are the majority of the population. With that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen, for that very structured presentation. May I call upon, without much ado, my good friend, old friend, Daniel Gad from Ethiopia. Daniel, it's good to see you. Welcome. Please take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Ismail. It's a pleasure to be with everybody once again in this time of long distance everything. I will make my comments as brief as possible and to the point, given the assignment we have with this very broad and heavy subject. I think if I had to use one word to recommend for our consideration and a way forward for farmers in Africa is to focus on the urban markets that are fast developing in African cities and link farmers to the urban communities with a very simple word, and that's action. The action would have to be mitigated and dependent on the development of infrastructure that would allow farmers to bring their crops and their products into the community, into the markets in a more direct way, which means roads, rails, buses, etc. This is something that is in development and is a core element of what we need to be successful no matter what market we approach. Secondly, we have the challenge of repairing or improving or repairing or improving the value chains that are currently very broken. Okay? It's a very important element in being able to go forward and farmers to have clarity with regard to their ability to connect with these markets. The most important thing for any farmer is not only to plant, but to find a market when he plants and when his crop is available. And if we don't make that available, I think our success rate would be very low. And an element of this discussion has to include the confidence building of farmers, since we have spent a lot of farmers' times with new ideas and new concepts and new seeds, new fertilizers, new ways of farming. We've been experimenting with agriculture in Africa for the last, 70 years or something. Sad to say that the results have not been as widely distributed or accepted as we would like them to be, but we have enough information. We know what we know. We need to put the success elements that we have learned and studied into action. Use low technology, use low cost, high technology, such as apps and simple devices that will help us get information to farmers, what crops for what markets at what time, in what weather conditions. We're not able to give farmers ready and available weather information as yet, although that information is available. It's in every IT background and it's readily available. And lastly, I have an abiding sense and fear that if we do not pay attention to creating the kind of sustainable information and knowledge base without establishing something like training centers for the youth, training centers that bring people through a system of very focused experiences to help build the confidence of young men and women who want to enter the farming markets and want to become farmers in the modern way. We will fail because we will not have addressed their needs. Yes, we have addressed the issues of finance, the availability of land, etc. We need to take advantage of those successes and then implement locations where people can go and say, I want to be trained to be like that farmer. Give me the tools and how I can do that. Lastly, my concern and my focus would be to help establish food processing centers, the transformation element of our value chain. It doesn't help a farmer to produce a crop if the consumer is not able to readily consume that crop in a way that makes sense for that market. Where are the transformation centers? We don't need big agro-industry processing centers. We need small regional transformation centers that will help aggregate, collect, sanitize, grade, package, and process, and then make available at high value. That is the way that a farmer can make more money, more income from a processed food, as opposed to handing it over to a trader who takes it to a food processor, who then packages it, grades it, and makes it available to the marketplace. These are the areas that I am focused on and interested, and I thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Very clear messages coming from there. May I call upon King David to speak to us, please? King David, are you ready? Hello, King David.
Hello, Ishmael. Ishmael, are you hearing me?
Yes, King David. Yes, I can hear you. If you could address us, please. Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the President of AGRA, the Vice President, and you, Ishmael, the moderator.
Thank you.
I must say that I am so grateful that I have been given this opportunity. King David Amwe is my name, the president of the Ghana Federation of Agricultural Producers, and also the president of the Farmers Organization Network in Ghana. One word I will say about the forum or the subject we are talking about is recognition. I want the development partners, governments, and NGOs to recognize the efforts of the smallholder farmer or the family farming, because we are doing a lot of things for the country. We feed the nations, we feed the world, and therefore there is the need for our governments to recognize the smallholder farmer, because the opportunity lies in the numbers. We all realize that smallholder farmers form a greater percentage of the population. And if that is the case, why don't we give attention to them? Let's also appreciate them for their efforts, for being able to produce the food that we eat. So if they produce the food that we eat, then everything should be done to help them. I want to take in Ghana the situation of cocoa. The cocoa farmers are not large-scale farmers. They are all smallholder farmers. But because you look at it, the governments give a lot of incentives, and also they recognize them and motivate them. Why can't we do the same? If we want to feed our nations, if we want to produce and be able to export. I want to say also that there are certain challenges that are mitigating against farmers. One is the land. We realize that in Ghana, the real estate people development, urbanization is taking over most of the farming lands that we have. And because of it, farming lands have become a very big problem. The other issue is about mechanization. Farm tractors. When the time comes for farmers to do their work, to go into production, we realize that we have to queue up for some of these tractors. And by the time that the rainy season is almost gone, viable seeds should be made available timely, because without the timely provision of these inputs, it becomes very difficult for farmers. The other issue is post-harvest losses. Many a times we realize that the farmers produce and during the good, but there are a lot of losses. So we need actually to make sure that when you encourage farmers to produce and we produce, there should be off-takers. And maybe in the case of vegetables, like tomatoes and other things, they should be able to add value for storage instead of importing all this from outside country. I also want to talk about the truthfulness. I want our governments and then the international partners or the development partners to be truthful to us. Sometimes they say, oh, go into this, the production of this crop. When you produce, there is market. Most of the time, the farmers abandon what they were used to and go in for the new suggestions. And then when they produce, there are no markets, and it leads to a lot of frustration. So it will be good that we actually come out with our truthfulness, to be truthful to our farmers. Then there is the issue of conflicts and insecurity in our sub-region. You realize about the Boko Haram issue. We realize about the unstable situation in our various countries, and this affects our farming situations. So it will be also advisable that our governments come up with good issues to arrest these conflicts and insecurity. Climate change, the last but not the least, is climate change. After harvesting, in Ghana, we have a long period of non-farm activity or farm activity. We know if there are irrigational facilities made available to farmers during the dry season or during the lean period, we can go into production, and that will make farmers to be all-round year farmers, producing to feed the nation. On this note, I think the last but not the least is subsidies. We will appeal to our governments to subsidize, because we realize that when they subsidize some of these inputs, the farmers produce and they produce in abundance, and then that also reduces the expenditures that we have in our production. So Ishmael, I think I will stop here and thank you very much for the good work that you have done and for this Farmers Forum.
Thank you so much, David. And without wasting much time, let me go on to Francois, whom I believe is in the studio, to please come and address the meeting.
Thank you. Madam President of AGRA and UN General Secretary, Food and Nutrition System, Envoy, Mr. the Vice President of AGRA, brother and sisters farmers here present, I would like, on behalf of Rwanda business community, particularly Rwanda farmers chamber, we would like to appreciate and address our sincere gratitude to AGRA and the government of Rwanda, who has managed to get this continental summit here in Kigali and invite us as farmers community in this event. I'm not specialist of all Africa agriculture. I'm not aware about what is happening there and here, but I will focus on Rwanda agriculture, how it can be resilient and be capable to mitigate all risk vis-a-vis this climate change that we are facing in these years. The Rwandan farmers, and we appreciate what the government has been doing over the last like 10, 15 years to develop our production systems. When we talk about production systems, we talk about land. As you have seen or can see, Rwanda is a country of 1,000 hills. But I would add also with 100 marshlands. Based on those two factors, it is possible to mitigate this climate change that we are facing. And the government of Rwanda has developed those hills by developing radical terraces in partnership and with collaboration with development partners. Also, they have just drained those 100 marshlands to be able to facilitate the production. But today, what I can say when I move around this country, where the government of Rwanda has invested a lot of money to develop some irrigated schemes, I see they are not optimally used by ourselves. We as farmers, we need to change. I give you an example. Last 3-4 weeks, I was in the Eastern Province, where government has invested a lot of money to develop the irrigated scheme with very, very well modern equipment called center pivot. As you know, in the last 2 months, we were in dry season, but I was surprised that between two harvests, because in Rwanda have 2 seasons, season A and B. Between the two seasons, the people, they are not capable to produce. They are still waiting again, like in the past, for rain in September to be able to start planting. So as farmers, we need to change ourselves. We have all opportunities to increase, and still to produce 2 times, we can produce 3 times a year. And that is a weakness probably as one of the leadership of private business community. I will be advocating for that. I will be sensitizing people to change. And as we have those basic infrastructure to produce, we need also to maintain it properly. It is very ridiculous after 2-3 years to see government has managed to irrigate, to drain one marshland using water properly, but after 2 years, okay, we go back to government, there's no system, water system is damaged. It's up to us as farmers getting money from that marshland to organize ourselves and maintain it, and to make sure the infrastructure that we have at our disposition will continue to serve us for a long time. Production is one thing, but there is also what we call trading and market. Between production and trading, there is post-harvest handling. We have a lot of gaps on that area. I think as farmers, we need to double the production efforts when you arrive at the harvest, because when you lose at the harvest, you lose like 2 times, 3 times, because when you consider the effort that you provided, the input that you have invested, we need to be serious with that. Brothers and sisters, farmers, we need really to double effort to minimize the loss at the harvest, to aggregate the produce, and then go through the commercialization. We need really different partners, government, to organize this, to help us to organize trading systems. Again, if I go back to what you have been doing over the past years, you see more than 60% of maize produced in this country is traded informally. That is a very big gap. And when you analyze, you go back, you go inside, you will see us as farmers, we are behind that, or we facilitate that. We need to be organized ourselves and bring our partners, because we are not the buyer, bring our partners, buyer, big industry for milling, for trading, logistics companies, and be together to be able to organize how do we get our produce to market by minimizing the loss, but also by maximizing the profit. That is also another challenges that we need to face, and I'm sure together we
Francois, sorry to interrupt.
Our partners will achieve that.
Francois,
to close,
apologies for interrupting. Can you start winding up, please?
Yeah, just
1 more minute.
Just to summarize what I was saying, as farmers, let us claim less and do more ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francois, for those words and advice. I believe we don't have any more speaker on the panel. We only have about up to 10 minutes of interaction with either the studio audience or to read some of the messages coming from the chats. Maybe let me start by just harvesting a few things that are coming from people who are commenting on this session. There are more than 350 people who are viewing this session. And interestingly, one of the observations they are making is that perhaps this kind of a forum needs to be a radio show, maybe radio shows in the different countries for farmers to have their voices expressing themselves in different platforms, either at the regional or global level, but more importantly, maybe at a local level or at the national level. That's one of the major outcomes, observations coming from this. There's a lot of support for training centers coming from Daniel Gad. A lot of issues about policy and infrastructure, about markets, which are perhaps no brainers for us, but these are the issues that farmers are grappling with in terms of even for subsistence farming as well as in their commercial orientation. There are issues to do with the issue of infrastructure, which is so fundamental that if you don't have basic socio-economic infrastructure, if you don't have bridges, if you don't have dams, if you don't have water, if you don't have a clinic, if you don't have telecommunications, really those are basic human decency requirements. How are you expected to really play a much more serious role commercially? So that those are some of the ABCs that needs to be sorted out before we can actually go more for the ambition that we want to commercialize. There's the issue of land, access to land, and security of tenure that has always come out. Just reading a few other messages, compliments around farmers' organizations and the need to strengthen them so that they play a fundamental role. I mean, it's ironic that as farmers, we are probably the biggest constituency in terms of value chain actors, and we are the most favored by politicians, and yet we are the least to influence policy. It is those fewer that are able to influence policy, and the larger ones like ourselves in terms of numbers are not able to. That speaks to the issue of how to efficiently organize ourselves and bring our voices to bear in terms of ensuring that the food systems are delivering to some of our pain points. What I read from this conversation before Theo comes in and before maybe one or two people from the studio can also make a comment is that we really need to have a system, food systems that talks to our own pain points. And I heard many pain points that came across here. And how can we make the food system deliver in terms of alleviating all the miseries that we have? We cannot continue to have a system that essentially is making us shoulder all the risk and other people in the value chain takes all the profit. So I think we need a system that talks to equity, a system that talks to fairness in the distribution of risk, in the distribution of reward. We need a system that is really value-based, a system that has got principles, a system that has a human face. Some of those principles are going to be fundamental in driving our ambitions, in shaping the way food is produced, the way food is distributed, the way food is processed, and the way food is consumed. And yes, we are part of an ecosystem, and we cannot isolate ourselves. We really need to speak and engage with the ecosystem. And as I said earlier on, a lot of what happens at the national level, maybe at the farm level, are also determined by some of the global conversations that are happening. And it's so important, as Dr. Kalibata said, that we organize ourselves to bring our voices to bear in those processes. I'll invite, if there's one or two people from, I understand there might not be anyone from the floor wanting to take, from the studio rather, wanting to take the floor. And at this stage, perhaps invite a man, a big man for that, who has been a lot of things to myself, has been my boss before, having served on the board of SACAO for a long time. And as if I was trying to run away from him, and then it ended up in PAFO, then it ended up in the World Farmers Organization. He taught me a lot of things, a lot of bad things and a lot of good things. We've done many things together, a lot of them good and some bad. And really, he is my partner in crime in some dimension, in as much as I say it, Fadil was. And it's an honor, indeed a pleasure, to listen to him, to speak to us. And may I call upon, with those not so kind words, call upon Dr. Theo Diaga, President of the World Farmers Organization, to address us, please. Theo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ismail. Yeah, he's the kind of friend against which my mother used to warn me. In a world which is rapidly warming, where we are bound to have 2 billion more mouths to feed, still in our lifetime, where more than half of the global population is now living in cities and counting, and where the inequality gap is increasing every day. At least over the last few years, the United Nations, as a platform for the nations of the world, got to an agreement on how to deal with our challenges by adopting the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, based on basically the 5 Ps. How are we going to manage people, peace, prosperity, planet, and partnerships in the next few years? And when they started to strategize and started to see consensus on this, the first portion of consensus was all about food and food systems. Hence, next year, we'll see this monumental occasion of a first Food Systems Summit, where the people of the world must get to an agreement on where do we take the production, the distribution, and the consumption of food. And to coordinate all this, we were lucky enough as farmers of Africa to have one of our own to be appointed as the UN Special Envoy, Agnes Kalibata. And we will still see in the next few months just how fortunate we are. But having said this, it is so important that this debate over the next few months, in the run-up to this Food System Summit, will hear the voice of the farmers. And thank you so much for all those who intervened up to now. All these inputs today coming especially from the farmers, which already gives us a good idea as to how farmers feel the issue of our food systems should be approached. We have heard from Agnes herself how important the summit itself would be, and it was also punctuated by the COVID pandemic. Never before has the stress of our food systems been tested as over the last few weeks and months, because it revealed everything that is wrong in our food systems. Fidel said to us that the farmer's voice must be mainstreamed in these debates. He said how important it is that all the most difficult questions that's being asked about our food systems be answered by the farmers themselves. Basically, he said, if we are not around the table, we will be on the menu. And then one after another of our speakers said, first of all, we need to produce more, on less and with less. We need to hold each other accountable and responsible for our footprint across our pastures and our fields, because the world will ask from us, what's your contribution to climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, and what are you as farmers going to do about it? We heard that in getting to these answers, we should leave no one behind. No one can be excluded. We must make sure that in the changing of food systems, we address the biggest single challenge of our continent, poverty and hunger. And yes, if there's any sector of the economy of this continent that can really create the kind of wealth to behead the dragon of poverty and hunger, it is indeed agriculture. Dick said, let's get to some inclusive business models for our farms. In farmers' language, let's get the smallholder farmer to become a profitable businessman or businesswoman, because agriculture is a business. If not so, it's a welfare case, and we have enough of those around. He also said, it was Matlasi Musi, my fellow South African, who said he owes 21 hectares. He's actually lucky because many of the beneficiaries of land reform in South Africa do not own their own land, and they have challenges to obtain investment, access to financing on their farms, without which we are not going to get to the modernization of agriculture on our continent. It is so important that we pursue a dream which I first heard well formulated by Daniel Gadd about an agricultural fund, a new foundation for agricultural investment on our continent. He also spoke of training the youth and the opportunities which the fourth industrial revolution, the digitalization of agriculture, brings along with it. We've also touched on the issues of food loss and waste. And in our context in Africa, it is especially the loss and waste after harvest, post-harvest loss and waste. But having touched on all this stuff, what is our position as African farmers in the run-up to the Food System Summit? And I've tried to press this through a mesh to see what would get out on the other side. And can I dare to summarize it in these 4 basic points? First, agriculture must create the wealth we need to destroy inequality and poverty. To do that, we need a fair distribution of risk and reward profits in our value chains. We need to decentralize initiative and innovation and entrepreneurship. And agriculture can do this on a broader basis than any other sector of our economy. And we need to remind the world during this run-up to the World System Summit that you must talk with the farmers rather than about the farmers. We can talk for ourselves because we have a voice, and it's our responsibility to strengthen that voice. Roll up our sleeves and get our farmers organized. Our time today is pregnant with change in food systems. Let's get into the driving seat. It's not for nothing that we sit here on a platform which is called the Green Revolution Alliance, not just a green debate or green change. To bring about a revolution means that we will change it up to its foundations. And in changing up to the foundations, we need to modernize, commercialize, and mechanize our agricultural systems. Thank you, Ishmael.
Thank you, Theo, for that very powerful summary. And as usual, it's always extremely difficult. I have to say extremely difficult speaking after you. But nevertheless, I always try. And I'm going to say a few words. And I know I won't match it up to what you said, but I'll also sort of borrow from some of your phrases. I think we're extremely honored as Africa and very privileged to have the person of Dr. Agnes Kalibata to be the special envoy on food systems. And we really, as farmers, should really take advantage of that. There are so many people who are in the food systems, ecosystems, who are clamoring to have a piece of fair, to have their voices heard. And the fact that she is with us today, not only herself as the president of AGRA and the special envoy, and that also the vice president in the name of Adele is also present, speaks a lot about their passion, their care for farmers. And there may not be many farmers in the world who have this privilege of having an audience of this nature with them. So let's take advantage of it and go for it. And as I said earlier on, there are some people in Africa, and I'm one of them, who are part of her support structures, who are helping here to mobilize the farmers' voices, to bring the messages across in terms of their expectations. We shall be contacting you in due course very soon to try and look at mechanisms through which some of these ideas could really come together and begin to be communicated in a much more structured format towards the build-up of the Food System Summit. So it's important that really, as farmers organizations, as farmers, you need to know which points you are going to touch on to be able to have it communicated at least together with others. It might not necessarily come out as sharp as you might want it to be, because it is really reflecting our diversity. But all the same, we need to have all our messages on the table. It's clear from what people are saying, what farmers are saying, and what the generality of the public are saying as well, that we've heard that how farmers are very poor, and yet they are the pillar of the food systems. That is the home of poverty, and that is the home of malnutrition. So the verdict here is, apart from COVID, apart from climate change, the verdict here is that the food systems have not delivered to us. If we are still poor and we're still struggling, surely the food system that we have is not the one that we want. So as Theo said, we want one that delivers wealth, that delivers prosperity, that will wrestle with the poverty that we are having to face. And we want one, as he borrowed from me, I'm also borrowing from him, one that is valued in equity, in the distribution and fairness of risk and reward. One that is having innovation and policy innovation that is also decentralized to the right levels, and one really that puts farmers at the center. But because we are so many, the largest constituency in the world, we then need to be on the center. We need to be organized. And therein comes the importance of how we can organize ourselves virtually like we are doing now, how we can mobilize ourselves virtually like we are doing now. We shall be holding food systems virtual dialogues amongst farmers. Maybe the same group that we have today, we could assemble in a few weeks' time to say, guys, let's have a food systems dialogue and speak about what is it that you want. And I shall be one of the people who will be catalyzing that debate on food systems dialogue in the run-up to the summit. I want to obviously finish and conclude by thanking all the listeners and viewers outside the studio, more in their hundreds, as well as thank the studio audience. And of course, thank all the panelists and presenters, and of course, the backroom staff. And again, thank Agnes and Fadel, and wish Agnes all the support and the best in her endeavors as the envoy for the UN Secretary General. I thank you. Here comes the end of our session for today, and thank you all farmers. Bye.